Chair Danielson, we're now live.
Thank you. We will call the meeting to order. My name is Liz Danielson, and I'm the Deputy Mayor of Algonquin Highlands and the chair of this committee. The following meeting of the Committee of Adjustment is a public meeting to consider development proposals that do not comply with provisions of the Township's comprehensive zoning bylaw. Our planner will provide a brief overview of the application, after which each applicant or their agent will have an opportunity to address the committee. Following this, anyone who wishes to speak to the application, whether in support or not, will be given an opportunity to do so. The committee will then discuss the proposal and be given an opportunity to ask questions respecting the application, and then vote to either grant, refuse, or defer the proposal. I'll introduce our committee members. Public member Gary Trapp, public member John Rogers, public member Chris Woods, member of council Julia Shortreed. With us as well are our senior planner Sean O'Callaghan and our chief building official Greg Moore. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof today? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes of March the 25th? Moved by Gary Trapp, seconded by Julie Shortreed.
Moved by Gary Trapp, second by Julia Shortreed. Be it resolved, the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves as circulated the meeting minutes of March 25th, 2022. John Rogers, yea or nay?
Yay.
Julia Shortreed, yea or nay?
Yay.
Gary Trapp, yea or nay?
Yay.
And Chris Woods, yea or nay?
Yay.
And Liz Danielson, yea or nay?
Yay.
That's carried.
Okay, we have no business arising from the minutes, so we'll move into the new business with the first application being from Kawagama Lake by Chance. And Sean, if you could give us your report, please.
Yes, this property is located at 1170 Vista Road. The lands are zoned shoreline residential type 1 and designated waterfront under the official plan. The property is approximately 1.15 acres in area with 53.1 meters of frontage on Kawagama Lake. Surrounding uses are generally shoreline residential, and the lands are currently developed with a dwelling, 3 sheds, a carport, a boat port, and a dock. The owner is proposing to demolish the existing boat port and dock to construct a new dock with a 744 square foot boat port. The proposed boat port will project into the water 11.81 meters from the shore. The water levels in front of the subject lands are quite shallow. The requested projection of the boat port will allow for the safe docking of a vessel with adequate water depth. For the proposed boat port, the following minor variance is being requested, and that is from section 4.2.9F of the zoning bylaw to permit an increase in the maximum projection of a boat port from 8 meters to 11.81 meters for the purpose of constructing a 744 square foot boat port. Notice of the application was posted on the property, posted on the township website, circulated to property owners within 60 meters of the subject lands and to the Kawagama Lake Property Owners Association. One letter of objection has been received from an adjacent landowner to the east with concerns related to environmental impacts, boating safety, noise, and light pollution. A letter of support was also received from the adjacent landowner to the west. Staff are recommending approval of the proposed minor variance.
Do any of the committee members have questions of Sean on the application? At this time, Mr. Trapp?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Just one clarification. The application is for relief from the distance out in the water. The fact that the regulations stipulate one boat slip, is there any requirement to add anything here, Sean, for the proposal, which is one larger slip and 3 smaller slips? Is that something that needs to be identified now or not?
No, so the boat port, the covered area is only 1 slip, which complies with the bylaw. The uncovered slips do not need to be recognized.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of Sean at this point? Okay, I believe that the applicant's agent, Mr. Christian, and the owner themselves, Julian Chance, are present and wish to speak. So we'll bring them in.
We're just bringing in the agent.
Okay.
Yep.
Good afternoon, Dane Christian here from Creative Design and Engineering, agent for the Chances,
Good afternoon.
I should say.
So is there further information or comments that you would like to make to the committee?
As you can see, I totally agree with Sean's report. We're just asking for the variance to push the boat port out further into the water because of the common issue in certain locations on Quaggan with the variance of the water level. And I'm just here to answer any questions if there are any.
I guess I'll go first, and I recognize that having just recently looked at the site, that the water levels are probably higher than they normally would be or would be later in the season. It looked to me like there was fairly adequate depth at the end of the dock now, but I recognize or I suspect that that might vary considerably. So I'd like a little information on that, because it is going considerably further out into the water. It's a much larger and wider platform than what was there previously, and I'm a bit concerned about the impact that might have. And I forgive me, I looking at the drawings, I saw it as the neighbor to the north, but I guess that direction might not be right. Anyway, if you could speak to the water depth and the need for it to become so much larger.
Maybe I could speak to that, Dan, and you can certainly add. So James Schlegel, and thanks to the committee for considering our application. And so two comments. One is with respect to the depth of the water. By kind of mid to end of August and certainly into September, the water depth in our current slip is, 1.5 feet. It's not nearly adequate to be able to get my boat into the slip at all. So for a good part of the latter part of certainly the summer, the slip is in its current location essentially unusable. It gets down to it's almost dry in September. So it gets very, very, very shallow to the point where it's not usable. So that's the motivation for being able to shift it a little bit further off the shoreline to get into a little bit deeper water. With respect to the size of the platform, we haven't exactly, it is larger than what the current dock is. My understanding of it, and certainly Mr. Christian can confirm, but my understanding is that what we're proposing is within the what's allowed by the zoning bylaws. We're not asking for a variance as it relates to the dock itself.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions that the committee members have of the agent or owners? I'll start with Mr. Woods.
It really is an interesting observation. The whole dock is quite a bit bigger than what the existing area is. And I must admit, it kind of is an issue, I guess, that the township has to deal with separately with maybe separate bylaws. But it is quite a bit larger, quite a bit larger living space, not only just above the port, but now you've increased the dock by quite a bit in size. An observation to me was you're putting in 3 boat ports in the shallow water, and that's the whole reason for moving everything out, was because it was shallow. So, you know, I understand that we're not really looking at the dock part of it, but my thoughts are a little bit concerned, I will say, about one, the design such that the 3 boat ports are in the shallow water, and 2, the size of the enlarged deck, not so much the boat port, but really the enlarged dock pushing out into the water more. Those are my concerns.
Just for clarification, Mr. Woods, I think we need to refer to those 3 as boat slips as opposed to ports, because there's a differentiation in.
I apologize, I meant boat slips.
Okay.
That's what I meant, boat slips.
So
And point well taken. I did make the same observation. I thought I'd wait and see what the committee members have to say.
So if I could, Madam Chair, just speak to that comment, and certainly Mr. Christian can add if he wishes. Yeah, again, I'll simply reiterate that we're not asking for a variance related to the dock. The dock size is within what's permitted by the zoning bylaw. So I think that's an important point to emphasize. And Mr. Woods, with respect to the 3 slips that you've identified, they are indeed in shallower water. Those are a slip for a little tin fishing boat, which can maneuver in 1.5 feet of water, and for a little a canoe and a Zodiac. So these are little boats that can manage within very shallow water. So those slips will still work for those little vessels.
And a paddle boat.
Yeah, and the paddle boat. So that's the purpose of those little slips, is just to handle the paddle boat and the canoe and the tin boat.
Appreciate that. It's a beautiful property and a beautiful design, by the way, but thank you for answering that.
You're welcome.
I concur with Mr. Woods. It is a beautiful property and design, and you've done well. But I was a little bit concerned about the reaction that people might have to the, as Mr. Woods stated, additional kind of living space, and whether that would create any issues with respect to noise and light and things like that. Any comment that you might make about that?
Yeah, sure. And
we have to consider things in a kind of an all-encompassing way.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I think I'm assuming you say living space, you're talking about the second kind of the roof of the boat port. And we went back and forth on that a little bit, whether we do a pitched roof or more of a flat roof. And we decided on a flat roof, partly to have some more space up there, but also partly because it's less intrusive to our neighbors and their views, that they can look past the boat port, look through it and over it much easier without a pitched roof. So we thought, in fact, it was less intrusive than something that had a pitch to it. So that was part of our consideration. And certainly with respect to lighting, our intent is not to, and I think there are restrictions on lighting, and our only plan with respect to lighting, frankly, is to put some relatively dim lights at the corners of the dock, just for safety purposes. So if other vessels are in the bay, that they can see the dock at dusk or at night. So we're not anticipating to add, in fact, don't want to add much more lighting than what's really required for safety purposes.
Thank you. Good point about the view. Mr. Rogers, questions or concerns?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just was wondering, the application, the boat that you're currently own, is that going to be the boat that will be using this new space, or are you planning on getting a new boat?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mr. Rogers. So, yeah, it's our current boat. I bought it 3 years ago from the Old Mill Marina. So it's only known Coagama Lake. And so I bought it new from Old Mill Marina. So my plan is that that'll be the boat that we have for the foreseeable future, and that's the boat that'll be in that slip. Yes.
And what did you do last year or last couple of years when the water did go down? How did you handle that? I had
to kind of dock it outside of the slip, along the dock portion of the dock that's further out into the water.
And we had a letter of objection from one of your neighbors who pointed out the Quagga Lake mission, I guess, or I'm not quite sure the vision for what Quagga would be like. Do you have any comments on that letter?
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Rogers. We certainly want to be good neighbors. We have gotten to know Bill and Carol quite well, and also John and Jane, both of whom submitted letters, one in support and one in objection. Unfortunately, due to COVID and due to the travel down south by Bill and Carol, we did not have a chance to talk to them about this application, and frankly, I feel badly about that because we wanted to talk to both of our immediate neighbors, and did not have an opportunity to do that with Bill and Carol. So I feel badly about that because we would have liked to have done that, but they have not been around. So my only comment is that well, two things. One is that I don't think that this application will have any adverse impact on the enjoyment of their property. Their view out into the lake is not impeded at all. In fact, doesn't even look in our direction. So there's going to be no adverse impact on the enjoyment of their property and their enjoyment of the lake whatsoever. So I think that'd be my main comment. Secondly, is that the objection they had, as I understand it, reading the letter, was again related to the size of the dock, and we're in compliance with the size of the dock as it relates to the zoning bylaw. So they're not actually objecting to the matter at hand that we're applying for the minor variance on.
One question for Sean. I know that we are dealing with the existing bylaw. Are there any changes in the proposed or about to be adopted bylaw that would change the dimensions or anything related to this application?
No.
Okay. Do we have someone in the audience who wishes to speak to this application?
Yes. Yeah, I believe Mr. McKillican is present.
Okay. We could bring him in and allow him to speak. Oh, before that, Mr. Trapp, you have a question? Sorry.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I certainly appreciate the comments around the water depth. We've got that issue around lots of lakes here, so I do appreciate the concern around the depth. Just when I step back, there's lots of measurements on your site plan. When I step back and look at, I just kind of have a couple of comments and a couple of questions. I get a sense when I'm looking at the measures that you're really going to the minimums only for setbacks. For example, I'll get to an example in a minute, but my concern is that in a lot of variance applications, we require surveys, and of course we do not in this case, nor would I even be suggesting anything remotely close to a survey. But because you're only meeting the bare minimum setbacks and it's based on your sketch, I would have been a little more comfortable if there was a little bit more margin in some of the dimensions of the setbacks. Specifically, if you look at the property width on the diagram, shows 174 feet, and you're allowed 25%, which comes out to I think 43.6, and the diagram shows 43 feet. So it's very close to the minimums, or to the maximum in that case. On the side setback, the minimum is 20 feet or 19.7 feet, And again, the diagram just looks like it's exactly at the minimum. And again, you know, your points of measure and the shoreline, it's pretty hard to be precise. So just a general comment, I would have been a little more comfortable if you had a little bit more margin regarding those measures in case they're a little bit off. So that's just sort of a comment and a general sense when I look at the overall schematic here. Question about the overall length. The projection of the proposed dock over the existing dock, it doesn't show a measure on there, but I'm guessing from scale and other amounts, it might be 7 feet-ish or so. I went out to your existing dock and had a look. Does that sound about right for the distance? That was that question. And obviously you'll be adhering to there's no width measurements on the diagram. So with the port, you'll be adhering, obviously, I know Sean's outlined to the 18 feet maximum. And this business of a second story, I appreciate your comments as well about a flat roof and not interfering with the views by putting a pitched roof on there. But you do have glass around it. So again, you're probably getting a little bit tight to the 15-foot height, I would guess. So you might have a little bit more margin there, I'm not sure. But in your second floor, I think it refers to 12.7 feet. And then if you've got glass rails or framing around it, I'm just wondering, you might be getting close there. So really all of that to say, you seem to be kind of tight on a lot of the minimums, and certainly on the side yard setbacks and so on. It would be nice sometimes to see a little bit more margin when we don't have survey measures to go by. So those are just some of my thoughts.
Before you respond, Dan, I'm just going to go to Sean and ask him if he's got any comments, because if I'm reading this correctly, we're actually meeting the setback requirements. It's the length of the dock that's at issue. But can you just speak to Gary's concern, Sean?
Yes, so the plan provided complies entirely with the bylaw, except for the variance being requested, which is the extension of the boat port as it projects from the water, or from the shoreline into the water.
Go ahead, Mr. Christian, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I was just wanted to comment that we did have a survey completed, and Sean, I believe you did get a copy of that, Sean. I'm sure I sent that to you. And and with regards to the measurements, like the width of the dock, we're allowed 15.9 and we're at 13.1. So, we're well within the widths of the maximums. The side setback is within the 20-foot projected. But you can see, because it's at an angle, it actually increases the setback from the actual property line as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, if there are no further questions at this point, we will allow Mr. McKilligan to speak. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity. Before I submitted my written objection on behalf of ourselves and the whole lake. And a little history behind that. Some 20 years ago, the Quagga Cottagers Association wanted to put forth a plan to preserve the quality of this lake. And over a period of 3 years, we had extensive consultation with all stakeholders. We made presentations to both municipalities and designed what we called the Quagga Lake Plan. That was the first of its nature in Haliburton County. I was on the executive of the Lake Association at that time, and I also did most of the work with the help of a committee on the survey that was extensively questioned everyone who had any interest in the quality and the future of this lake. And at the same time, I represented Quagum Lake and all of Halliburton on the Muskoka Watershed Committee. And that committee lasted for 5 years. And our main focus was the study of water levels and water flows in the some 2,200 lakes of the watershed and all the adjoining rivers. So I became very knowledgeable about lake levels and water levels, and I actually monitored them for a number of years on behalf of both the Lake Association and the Ministry of Natural Resources. And I still have markers in front of my dock, a fairly small one, that will show where the levels are at various times of the year. And when Sean called me about this to, I think, try and talk me out of the objection, I mentioned the rule curve. He didn't know what it was. But the rule curve is really a graph, and it's a plan that was eventually agreed upon between the Lake Association and the Ministry of Natural Resources for the control of water levels. And they currently fluctuate approximately 1 meter is the idea, or is the maximum fluctuation objective. Usually it doesn't fluctuate quite that much, but sometimes it can, and it depends on a number of factors, so we won't get into those. Right now, the water is at its peak spring level, and I have a number of markers that will tell me that. It will go down about 6 or 7 inches to the average summer level from what it is right now. So Chair Danielson, when you looked at the depth, the average summer level will be about 6 inches below that, not 1.5 feet. And in the fall, starting in September, the M&R will start lowering the water levels, and it's all related to fish spawning. And they try to get it down by the end of September, forcing the fish to lay further ashore, from shore, so that we won't kill the eggs when the ice comes in. And that used to be a major problem in Quagga when they took it down 2 meters. So then it starts to come back up in the fall once the fish have laid, so that the ice won't freeze those in. So that was part of it. But some of the key features of that whole lake plan, in fact, there were 4 strands. And one strand was to protect the water. There was a strand dealing with a whole bunch of issues to protect the shoreline. Then there was a set of conditions that would appeal to the people of the lake to try and maintain the naturalness of the precious commodity that we have here and not let it become like a Muskoka lake. Those were what probably at least 80% of the people on the lake subscribed to. And fourthly, there was a set of appeals about boating safety and boating courtesy and noise levels and so on. So those were the social kind of conditions that we wrote into the plan to try and appeal to people to be good neighbors. And in that naturalness, we talked about shoreline clutter. And clutter meant bigger docks, more boathouses, and so on. We also talked about light pollution. And I have to say that the applicants here have strewn their whole yards with lights that stay on all the time, even when they're not here. And they are light polluters.
That's outside of the purview of this application.
Of course it's outside, but it was already mentioned. Jamie mentioned that he would keep the light down, and that has not been the case. So our objection is both personal and it's for the lake preservation. And I'm really sorry that our new neighbors are not willing to buy into the spirit of that lake plan if they know about it. It's quite disappointing. So I hope that the Committee of Adjustment will look at the issues of shoreline clutter and reject this proposal. And we are opposed to the lengthening of the dock. And while it was mentioned that it doesn't impede our views, we look on the lake, that's true. But we spend a lot of time down at our own lakefront, and we have to, every time we look to the west, we just see stuff everywhere. Many of them floating toys. And I know, Sean, you're going to interrupt me and tell me that's not part of this, but it's still part of the clutter that we have to look at. And it spoils part of our ambience.
Okay,
So
I
certainly object to the length of the dock and request that you stick to the rules that we have.
Well, that is, if I might, Mr. McKillen, I thank you very much for your comments, and I appreciate a lot of what you're saying. In response, I'd like to make a few comments about what you've said. First of all, Sean is required to stick to our zoning bylaw and the rules that we have in place to planning acts and procedures. And I'm quite convinced that, in his discussion with you, he would be trying to clarify what your concerns were, not to convince you otherwise. That is not his role. As you're aware, all of the 4 lower tier municipalities and the county have been working very hard on a shoreline preservation bylaw, something which has become extremely contentious, but is trying to address a lot of the concerns that you've raised as a matter of law, so that we have an ability to act on those things. Sadly, boat traffic is not something that we have any jurisdiction over. We can advocate all we like with the province, but that's only with the best hopes that they will, listen, and they often don't. Also, the municipality is looking at the issue of property standards and possibly establishing a property standards bylaw, something that we will be looking on, and which may address some of the other concerns that you've stated about stuff on the property or on the shoreline, or, it's one person's gold is another person's garbage. And, the word junk could mean many things to many people, but I would look to committee members if they have questions of Mr. McKillican, and then to Mr. Christian and the applicants to respond as well. Are there questions of the committee of Mr. McKillican? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Christian, or to yourselves as owners, would there be comments that you'd like to make in response?
I can start. As a designer, I was purely, working with the bylaw, trying to work within the bylaw. The first couple of plans I sent to Sean pointed out some things that weren't meeting, so I adjusted accordingly to meet. I think I had a misinterpretation of the setback requirement. I had it parallel to the property line as opposed to perpendicular to the shore, so we adjusted that and moved it accordingly. So we're just trying to design the boat port and dock system all completely within the bylaws. The only thing we are requesting is the pushing it out further into the lake, the boat port, because of the depth, which I know I've had a number of clients on Quagma Lake that have had the exact same issue.
William or Julian, anything that you want to say? Sorry, William or Bill?
Bill, my summary comment is preserve the heritage. That's what the lake asked us to do.
I hear what you're saying, but we are faced with dealing with what we have in place with our zoning bylaw. That's the role of this committee. And I would add that we have held a number of public meetings in efforts of putting a new zoning bylaw in place. And that's an opportunity for anyone who has any concerns about what goes on their lake or in their area to speak to us. And there have been a number of boat ports and dock extensions on Coagama Lake in the last several years, and there have been no formal objections to them. So I think maybe what we need to do is establish a stronger communication link between what your goals are as a lake association and what we're faced with as a municipality, and possibly bring them closer together. But for now, we are dealing with a bylaw and a specific application.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may, I don't have, I guess, a lot to say, other than, firstly, we certainly want to be good neighbors, and I guess I'm somewhat disappointed to hear from Bill that he doesn't consider us to be that, but we'll certainly continue to work at that, because that's certainly our intent and the spirit with which we bring this application and our ownership at the lake. And so, you know, obviously we want to and will continue to work at being good neighbors for sure. You know, and yeah, the narrow issue we are applying for here is shifting the boat slip further into the lake, so there's sufficient water for depth for the boat to be able to get into it. That's really our objective here. It's nothing more, nothing less than that. Everything else, we're compliant with the zoning bylaw. I think some of the issues that Bill is raising are perhaps, you know, raising issues with respect to the zoning bylaw, but you know, that's the zoning bylaw that is in effect, and the one that we're operating within, and the one that we're applying for the variance from. So I certainly appreciate why the water levels drop and are adjusted in the lake, and Bill certainly understands the reasons for that and how it's done and why it's done far better than me. He's certainly got a lot of knowledge in that area. All I know is I can't get my boat slip later in the season, and it seems unfortunate to have a boat slip when you can't use it for part of the season. So that's what's motivating this. Nothing more, nothing less. We're trying to design something that is not offensive, that is again, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, I suppose, as the chair has suggested. But I don't think that what we're designing is clutter or offensive or, frankly, creating any adverse undue impact on our neighbors. And frankly, I would argue is relatively consistent with the principles that Bill has laid out. So I guess I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. My apologies. Could I just get you to clarify your name again? I just see Julian's name up
Yeah,
on the screen. And
sure. James Schlegel is my name. Yeah, sorry about that.
Sean, do we have anyone else who wishes to speak to the application, either for or against?
No, we do not.
Do any of the committee members have any remaining questions or require further clarification? Hearing none, I would ask for a mover and a seconder for the resolution to be read. Moved by Julia Shortreed, seconded by Chris Woods.
Moved by Julia Shortreed, seconded by Chris Woods. Be it resolved, the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves minor variance application AHMV 00322 to seek relief from section 4.2.9F of the zoning bylaw to permit an increase in the maximum projection of a boat port into the water from 8 meters to 11.81 meters for the purpose of constructing a 744 square foot boat port. Julia Shortreed, yea or nay?
Before you go to the vote, please, Sean.
Oh.
I think I saw Mr. Rogers' hand up. He may have a comment or question before we take a vote.
So thank you, Madam Chair. I did want to just make a comment that I will not be supporting the minor variance. I don't like going against Sean's recommendations, but I think almost to be consistent, there is a neighbor across, certainly on the other side of Vista Drive. I'm not quite sure what part of the lake that is or how you describe it, but they did made the same application. I was not in support of extending a dock into the water, and it's based really on a lot of what Mr. McLaughlin had said, that and we, as not everybody on the committee is potentially a cottage owner, but as people who have waterfront properties, you get used to the water going up and down, and the boats having to be shifted as far as docking facilities are concerned, especially as the fall comes along. So I'm just not in support of varying that aspect of the bylaw. So I will be voting against. Thanks.
Thank you for that. We will hear your vote in a matter of course, but I do appreciate that when someone is going to vote against the resolution, that they speak to their reason why. So thank you, Mr. Rogers. So proceed with the vote, please, Sean.
Julia Shortreed, yea or nay?
Yay.
Gary Trapp, yea or nay?
Yay.
Chris Woods, yea or nay?
Yay.
John Rogers, yea or nay?
Yay.
And Liz Danielson, yea or nay?
Yay.
That's carried.
I do thank you, Mr. McKillican, for your comments, and we hear your voice, we really do, but we're working within a structure that we kind of have to stick to. And we are using other mechanisms to address some of the issues that you brought up. As to the applicants, just to be aware that there is a 20-day appeal period and not to do any construction until that timeframe has gone by.
Understood.
Thank you to you all.
Yep, thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
The next item is by Mcintyre on Boshking Lake. If we could hear your report on that, please, Sean.
This property is located at 1019 Strand Lane. The lands are zoned shoreline residential type 1 and designated waterfront under the official plan. The property is approximately 0.24 acres in area with 24.3 meters of frontage on Boshking Lake. Surrounding uses are generally shoreline residential, and the lands are currently developed with a single family dwelling, 3 sheds, a privy, and a sleeping cabin. The applicants are proposing to demolish the existing dwelling and construct a new 1,871.9 square foot 2-story dwelling. The proposed dwelling will be constructed in the same general footprint of the existing dwelling and will be no closer to the high water mark than the existing dwelling. The existing and proposed dwelling will be set back 8.3 meters from the high water mark. A small washroom addition is proposed to the rear of the building. The small lot area and existing site infrastructure, including the septic and driveway, do limit the available building locations for the proposed dwelling that would comply with the zoning bylaw requirements. To accommodate the proposed development, the following minor variance is being requested, and that is from section 4.10.53 of the zoning bylaw to permit a reduction in the required setback from the high water mark from 15 meters to 8.3 meters. For the purpose of constructing a 1,871.9 square foot 2-story dwelling. Notice of the application was posted on the property, posted on the township website, circulated to property owners within 60 meters of the subject lands and to the Boshking Lake Property Owners Association. No objections have been received. 3 letters of support have been received, and staff are recommending approval of the proposed minor variance with the following conditions. 1, that confirmation be provided from an Ontario land surveyor that the proposed dwelling is not located closer than 8.3 meters from the high water mark prior to any clearing, site alteration, or the issuance of a building permit. 2, that any on-site sewage system permits and reviews required by the township have been obtained and approved prior to the issuance of a building permit. And 3, that appropriate construction mitigation measures be implemented, which shall include the erection and maintenance of silt fencing between the proposed building and the shoreline.
Thank you. Do any members of council have questions of Sean on the details of the application? Mr. Trapp.
Yeah, just thank you, Madam Chair. Just to clarify, the report talks about the relief from the high water mark, but the applicant's actual application document in number 6 refers to a square footage amount in relation to 15% coverage, and it talks about relief. It looks like relief of square footage amount, I think, of 331. So just wonder for clarity, can we just clarify the square footage amounts and the fact if we are or are not asking for relief on the square footage? And maybe I was confused the way I read it, but I was going by the actual application document as well, and it just it kind of jumped out at me. So,
Yep, so I can clarify that. So the application, I did speak with the applicant just to clarify what the actual request being sought was, because they do fall within the required lot coverage requirements. So I do have an email confirming the amendment to the application. So I apologize for not including that in the agenda package.
well, that's quite all right. So the relief for square footage, that's been addressed, and it's a non-issue then.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Sean?
Madam Chair, and I'm a little confused. I did go and visit the site, and I'm a little confused on the whole application from what I was seeing in terms of stakes in the ground and how far and where would this particular building go. And my question is really related to the drawing that I'm looking at, which is looks like a shaded in area, and it shows the existing deck. Is that from the original building? Is that the existing deck going to be the same deck, or is it being reconstructed?
And if the same deck, the same distance?
That's the question really that I'm boiling down to. Sean, can you answer that?
Yes, so the deck would be considered a legal non-complying structure, so it could be replaced exactly as is right now. So if they are going to be tearing it down, they could rebuild it to the exact dimensions that it currently exists. And I believe that is the intent, but the applicants may be able to confirm that.
Okay, then I'll wait for their confirmation. And the second one, the septic system, which is at the back of the property, is it going to be enlarged and more for the increased size of the property or the structure?
And the additional bathroom?
Sorry,
So that would need to be addressed as part of the building permit process. So if it's not adequately sized, it would need to be increased. My understanding is, I believe it's a relatively new system and it was built with the intention of constructing a new dwelling. But that will be something that will be checked should the application be approved.
Okay, thank you.
So I believe that the applicants, Julie and William Mcintyre, are one or the other of them are present to speak to the application.
Yes, we'll bring them in.
This is one of those tight properties, you know, when it comes to replacing an existing structure, it's tight. Good afternoon. You're on mute. If you could put your sound on, we can hear you.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Can you hear me? Hi, I'm Sandy Mcintyre, William Mcintyre. Sandy's the nickname. This is my wife, Julie. And I just wanted to thank the committee for considering our application. We've been on the lake, our family, since 1961. And this cottage has been the focal point of our family since that time. And what we're really looking to do is build something on the same footprint as Sean rightly mentioned. And for those of you who saw the property, it's obviously a tight squeeze, but it's we want to respect all of the various requirements and build it on more or less the same footprint with one small addition at the back that Sean referred to. The septic tank is relatively new. When Keith Thomas put it in, he did put it in with a view to accommodating an additional washroom, even though, to be honest, at that point in time, we didn't really have any firm intentions. I think it was 2005 that we had the new septic tank put in. The cottage will be no closer to the lake. It'll be basically at the same point that all the other cottages down our beach, same distance from the high water mark. It is our intention to keep the deck. We're not sure, I think just leave it as is for now, but it is a big part of the enjoyment of the cottage to be able to sit out and outside. So those are really our intentions. Sorry, I said the septic can accommodate an extra bathroom.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, we were led to believe that the bathrooms that we're adding will still be within what's allowed.
But obviously,
allowable.
but obviously if it's not, we'll have to adjust accordingly. We worked with Mitch O'Grady in getting all the information together, and I mean, obviously doesn't have the final say, but he seemed to think that we would comply for the size of our septic.
Well, we'll leave that part of the discussion to you, and Mr. Moore is our chief building official.
Okay, thank you.
Questions for the applicants from the committee? No questions? Is there, go ahead, Mr. Rogers.
I'm just going to move the recommendation.
Oh, hang on. Thank you, but I just wanted to ask first, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this application?
No, there's nobody else.
Okay. Then could I have a mover and a seconder to hear the resolution about the application? Mr. Rogers and Ms. Shortreed.
Moved by John Rogers, seconded by Julia Shortreed, be it resolved that the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves minor variance application AHMV 00822 to seek relief from section 4.10.53 of the zoning bylaw to permit a reduction in the required setback from the high water mark from 15 meters to 8.3 meters for the purpose of constructing a 1,871.9 square foot two-story dwelling, subject to the following conditions. One, that confirmation be provided from an Ontario land surveyor that the proposed dwelling is not located closer than 8.3 meters from the high water mark prior to any clearing or site alteration or the issuance of a building permit. Two, that any on-site sewage system permits and reviews required by the township have been obtained and approved prior to the issuance of a building permit. And three, that appropriate construction mitigation measures be implemented, which shall include the erection and maintenance of silt fencing between the proposed building and the shoreline. Julia Shortreed, yea or nay?
Yay.
Gary Trapp, yea or nay?
Yay.
Chris Woods, yea or nay?
Yay.
John Rogers, yea or nay?
Yay.
And Liz Danielson, yea or nay?
Yay.
That's carried.
Thank you.
So your application has been approved, subject to a 20-day appeal period. So no additional construction until that's gone through. Although
Thank you very much.
started to tear things apart, and there's a lot of work. Good luck with your project.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you. Next is a closed session. John, do you have a resolution to go into closed?
Yes, I do. So I just need a mover and seconder for that.
Could I have a mover and a seconder? Mr. Rogers and Mr. Trapp. We'll bring-
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Moved by John Rogers, seconded by Gary Trapp. Be it resolved, the Committee of Adjustment hereby adjourns its open session at 1:55 p.m. To proceed into a closed session pursuant to section 239 bracket 3.1 of the Municipal Act as amended for the purpose of education and training. John Rogers, yea or nay?
Yay.
Julia Shortreed, yea or nay?
Yay.
Gary Trapp, yea or nay?
Yay.
Chris Woods, yea or nay?
Yay.
And Liz Danielson, yea or nay?
Yay.
That's carried. Now, just procedurally, I'll have to just ask for 5 minutes because I'm gonna have to run back to my office so we can bring up a PowerPoint presentation. So we'll just be a few minutes and then we'll proceed into close.
Okay, and I will want to make a couple of comments before Mr. Elson begins.
Perfect.
Now we get into the technical difficulties associated with switching from one type of meeting to another.
Okay, we're back in open session now.
Did you have a question, Mr. Rogers?
Oh, it's anxious to move adjournment.
Okay, moved by Mr. Rogers and seconded by Mr. Trapp.
Moved by John Rogers, second by Gary Trapp. Be it resolved, the Committee of Adjustment hereby adjourns its regular meeting at 2:53 p.m. John Rogers, yea or nay?
Yay.
Gary Trapp, yea or nay?
Yay.
Chris Woods, yea or nay?
Yay.
And Liz Danielson, yea or nay?
Yay.
That's carried.
Everyone, have a good weekend. Thanks for your
Thank you
time
Very
today.
much.